Hello, everyone. Welcome to podcast series Learn English While Sleeping on Learn English podcast channel. In this podcast series, we're going to uncover a range of different topics. Our podcasts are a great choice for practicing your listening and speaking skills. In this episode, we will dive into the fascinating world of fashion. Joining me in today's podcast is the youngest chief editor of Go Chic magazine, who is one of the most influential figures in the industry today. Fiona, welcome to the talk.
Thank you, Catherine. It's my pleasure to be here.
So, Fiona, you're known for your outstanding contribution in the fashion industry. And all of that commitment surely comes from your passion for fashion. So, could you tell me what sparked your love for fashion? Was there a special time or something that got you into clothes?
Of course. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by the stories clothes could tell. Like my grandma's old dresses with fancy details or outfits in classic movies. Clothes are like a language that could tell you a lot about history and cultures. That's what really got me interested.
I see. Fashion definitely has its own rich history. It reflects changes in society over time. So let's explore its timeline from ancient times to the present. Fiona, could you tell us, how was fashion like in the ancient times?
In the early days, clothing served mainly as protection from the elements. People used natural materials like leaves, animal skins, and woven fibers.
How did fashion evolve in the medieval period?
In the Middle Ages, what people wore was shaped by their social rank and religious beliefs. Most people wore simple, tunic-style clothing made from wool or hemp. The nobility, however, wore more luxurious garments with silk, velvet, and intricate embroidery.
What about the fashion trends during the Renaissance?
This period was marked by an increased interest in art, science, and exploration. The use of luxurious fabrics like silk and velvet became popular among the wealthy.
Now let's fast forward to the modern era. How did fashion evolve during the 20th century?
From the flapper dresses of the 1920s to the bold colors and patterns of the 1960s, each decade brought its own unique styles and trends. Throughout the century, fashion became more diverse and reflective of social changes.
Now, as we approach the present, what can we know about fashion in recent years?
In recent years, fashion has become more inclusive. More people care about sustainability now, using eco-friendly materials and fair production methods.
It's remarkable to witness how fashion has evolved and adapted to the changing times. Just like any other field, fashion is constantly changing. Fashion could not be where it is today without reaching important milestones.
That's right. Fashion is so much more than what's on the runway. It could be a reflection of culture and social movements.
So, Fiona, when you think about iconic fashion moments, what comes to your mind?
I am most impressed with Coco Chanel's little black dress. It was such a game changer back in that time.
What do you think made this such a groundbreaking moment?
It goes way beyond the dress itself. Back then, black was associated with mourning or servants' uniforms. But Chanel's idea of the little black dress broke the rules. Her dress was simple, elegant, and accessible. The dress was a symbol of liberation and a move away from society restrictions.
Wow, what a powerful statement. In 1947, Christian Dior unveiled his new look, which became an instant sensation. Can you explain what was so special about it?
Well, after the tough times of World War II, Dior's designs were like a breath of fresh air. They were all about attractive waistlines, full skirts, and fancy materials. It was like saying goodbye to the plain clothes people wore during the war.
It was kind of like giving the world a fashion makeover after a rough time, right?
Yeah, it was a return to glamour and femininity, and women everywhere craved for it.
Now moving on to the 60s, a time of social change and rebellion. In 1966, Yves Saint Laurent challenged the status quo with his Lee smoking design. Could you tell us about this?
This was a major moment for gender equality in fashion. It was the first tuxedo specifically designed for women.
It's amazing how something as seemingly simple as a tuxedo could be such a powerful symbol.
It challenged traditional notions of femininity and empowered women to dress for themselves, not for men.
Fashion is definitely breaking the norms, isn't it?
Exactly. And on the topic of breaking barriers, we can't forget about Beverly Johnson in 1974. She became the first Black model to grace the cover of American Vogue.
This was a huge milestone.
For decades, fashion magazines lacked diversity. But Beverly's appearance on the cover opened doors for countless models of color and redefined the image of beauty in the fashion world. People of color deserve to be seen and celebrated in the world of fashion.
I agree. Representation truly matters. Now let's talk about ordinary item that became a fashion icon.
In 1976, Calvin Klein shocked the industry by showcasing jeans on the runway.
Denim on the runway? That seems so common today.
Back then, denim was considered casual wear. Klein's decision to elevate jeans to high fashion was a genius idea. They became a symbol of rebellion and individuality, and of course, the foundation for his future billion-dollar empire.
It's amazing how simple things can have such a lasting impact. One of the topics that's been making waves in the fashion industry is fast fashion. For our listeners who might not be familiar, could you explain what fast fashion is?
Fast fashion is basically clothing that's produced quickly and cheaply to keep up with the latest trends. Clothes are produced in huge quantities, often with low-quality materials, so they're not meant to last.
Wow, that sounds pretty wasteful. But why has fast fashion become so popular?
There are a few reasons. Fast fashion makes trendy clothes affordable for everyone. Plus, social media influencers keep showing off new outfits, making us feel like we need to keep up with the latest trends. So it's a cycle of buying and throwing away.
So that's how it works.
Fast fashion is everywhere. It's cheap, trendy, and constantly changing.
So what's the real story behind those low prices?
Actually, the low prices often come at a high cost. In order to keep prices low, companies often engage in questionable practices. These can have a serious impact on the environment and the people who make the clothes.
I see. Normally, we don't think about the actual impacts of the clothes we wear. Could you tell us more about that?
Sure. Mass production of cheap clothing requires vast amounts of water, energy, and chemicals for dyeing fabrics. Unused clothes, after being thrown away, will end up in landfills, which will generate more waste.
That's actually alarming. What about its effects on the society?
Let's not forget the human cost. Fast fashion brands often rely on factories in developing countries. They are paid very low wages for long working hours. The working conditions are considered poor and unsafe.
That's a harsh reality compared to all the fancy clothes we wear on our bodies.
Yes.
I think that as consumers, we should be more aware of where our clothes come from and how they're made. Do you have any advice for our listeners who want to make more sustainable fashion choices?
I would suggest looking for brands producing sustainable materials. We should also buy quality pieces that will last, or even explore thrift shops for unique finds. Fashion can be sustainable and stylish at the same time.
That's a wonderful advice, Fiona. Now let's get to know some fresh vocabulary related to fashion. Classic, meaning having a high quality or standard against which other things are judged. Example, the little black dress is a classic wardrobe staple. Intricate, meaning having a lot of small parts that are arranged in a complicated or delicate way. Example, the tiled floor is installed in an intricate pattern. Iconic, meaning very famous or popular, especially being considered to represent particular opinions or a particular time. Example, John Lennon gained iconic status following his death. Mass production, meaning the process of producing a lot of goods cheaply using machines in a factory. Example, They specialize in the mass production of furniture with modern designs. Sustainable, meaning causing little or no damage to the environment and is able to continue for a long time. Example, the website encourages sustainable fashion through swapping. Luxurious, meaning very comfortable and expensive. Example, they have a very luxurious house. Elegant, meaning graceful and attractive in appearance or behavior. Example, she wore an elegant satin dress. Throughout the growth of fashion, let's not forget the people who consciously shape its course.
Yes, we could not think of fashion without mentioning the iconic influencers. This is also what I love to talk about. These people, in my opinion, have made a lot of contribution to the fashion world. They're also my source of inspiration.
So, Fiona, can you share with our listeners about this?
I want to kick things off with Coco Chanel. She always remains a true trendsetter and a revolutionary designer. Think of the little black dress, a wardrobe staple even today. She popularized the idea of effortless elegance together with ease and simplicity. That's what made me admire her the most.
Coco was all about practicality and chic.
You got it right.
So who is your second inspiration?
You could make a guess. She is currently the editor-in-chief of Vogue magazine.
Oh, that must be Anna Wintour with the signature bob and sunglasses.
That's correct. Her ability to spot talent and trends has pushed her to the top of the industry. Besides working at Vogue, she has supported new designers and influenced fashion culture through her editing.
Anna Wintour is always our legendary editor. What about fashion designers?
There are so many talented designers I want to mention, but probably the one who has the greatest influence over my style is Gianni Versace.
Versace is all about pushing boundaries.
Exactly. His brand is known for vibrant colors, bold prints, and a sense of luxury. He wasn't afraid to be different, and that's what made him such a trendsetter.
Speaking of Gianni, he is the founder of the brand Versace. Hearing his name reminds me of something interesting I recently learned.
Can you tell me what it is?
Versace is a high-end brand, am I right?
That's true.
I'm interested in high-end brands because I see celebrities wearing them all the time, and they always look so stylish. What are so special about them?
Great question, Catherine. High-end fashion is about more than just a fancy label. It's a mix of several factors. First, the quality of materials is top-notch. They are carefully selected for their durability, aesthetic, and sustainability. These materials not only feel amazing, but also last for years. You can definitely feel the difference between a silk blouse and a regular cotton one.
Exactly.
Luxury brands are also about craftsmanship. They only hire highly skilled artisans, making sure each piece has a level of quality you won't find in mass-produced clothes.
So, it's like wearing a little piece of art. But isn't it all just about expensive materials and hard techniques?
Not necessarily. High-end fashion is also about timeless design. These brands focus on creating classic silhouettes that never go out of fashion.
So you're saying that high-end fashion is an investment, not just a purchase?
You got it right. A well-made piece can become a treasured part of your wardrobe for years to come. Designer pieces hold their value well and can be passed down through generations.
But let's be honest, high-end fashion comes with a hefty price tag. What about people who can't afford those designer labels?
That's a valid point.
Great tips. So high-end fashion can be an inspiration even if you're not buying designer clothes.
Definitely.
Let's talk about boundaries in fashion. Do you think there are any limits to what we can wear?
That's a good question. Traditionally, fashion trends have been quite defined. There were rules about what was appropriate for certain occasions. But the world of fashion is becoming increasingly globalized.
That's true. Social media has definitely played a role in that. Now we see trends globally, and people are mixing styles from everywhere. Isn't it cool, don't you think?
Yes, It's all about personal expression.
But with this freedom comes responsibility, right? There's a difference between appreciating a culture and disrespecting it.
That's true. Cultural appropriation is a real issue. It's important to appreciate different cultures. But it's also crucial to do so with respect and understanding. Borrowing an element is one thing, but outright copying or disrespecting cultural significance is another.
I see. Now, there is an opinion that in this global fashion scene, there is a potential risk of losing our cultural identities. What are your thoughts on this?
Traditionally, fashion trends were pretty localized. But with the internet and social media, we're fed with styles from all over the world. It's exciting, but it can also be overwhelming.
I couldn't agree more. It's hard to keep up in this era of globalization.
But I think global fashion scene isn't about erasing cultural identity. It's more about celebrating diversity and finding inspiration from different parts of the world. You could think of it like adding spices to a dish. Each culture adds a unique flavor.
It truly is. So, in your opinion, are there any limits to fashion?
Personally, I think the only limits are your imagination and your respect for others. Fashion is a journey of self-discovery, and the world is your inspiration board. You could explore different styles, but always do it with an open mind and a kind heart.
That's a great way to put it. Now, let's get to know some fresh vocabulary related to fashion. Inspiration, meaning someone or something that gives you ideas for doing something. Example, the golden autumn light provided the inspiration for the painting. Trendsetter, meaning a person, organization, etc. that starts new fashions, especially in clothes. Example, female trendsetters must step forward and show what can be done. Revolutionary, meaning completely new and having a great effect. Example, the 20th century brought about revolutionary changes in our lifestyles. Practicality, meaning to arrange that an event or activity will happen at a particular time. Example, the meeting has been scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Craftsmanship, meaning skill at making things. Example, the craftsmanship of the Tiffany lamp is of the highest standard. Timeless, meaning having a value that is not limited to a particular period but will last forever. Example, that song stands out as a timeless classic. Silhouette, meaning the overall outline shape of the clothed fashion figure. Example, this dress has a very elegant, aligned silhouette.
So, Catherine, I have an idea. Why don't we go through some fun facts about fashion? Behind each fact, we can get to see the real cultural and social context throughout history.
That's a nice suggestion, Fiona. So, Fiona, do you have anything interesting to share with our listeners?
Of course. Let's start with high heels. We all know that high heels are worn by most women. But actually, they were originally designed for men. Back in the 16th century, Persian soldiers wore heels to help them secure their stirrups while riding horses. European aristocrats in the 17th century wore them as a symbol of wealth and status. It wasn't until much later that women started wearing them in Europe. Since then, high heels become one of most women's essential items.
I always thought high heels were invented for women.
Another one that might surprise you is the history of the little black dress. We often associate it with Coco Chanel in the 1920s. But before Chanel popularized it back in Victorian eras, women wore black mourning cloths after their husband's death.
That sounds interesting. That example goes on to show how versatile the color black is. Is there an example about a fashion fad that went out of style?
Oh, there are so many. Remember those wide-leg parachute pants from the 90s? Originally, they were created for military purposes with a baggy design that allowed for ease of movement. The lightweight fabric was inspired by the materials used in actual parachute canopies.
I think comfort won over style in that case. Let's move on to something a bit more timeless. What about a classic fashion item?
Surely, the iconic white t-shirt has quite a humble beginning. It started off as undergarments for men in the 18th century. In the 20th century, the U.S. Navy began using them as standard undershirts. After its appearance in movies in the 50s, it became a symbol of casual coolness. People started wearing them as outerwear ever since.
It's interesting to know such an iconic item was made out of need for comfort.
There's another cool invention that was created by accident. Have you heard of the famous Christian Louboutin red sole shoes?
They are my favorite shoes.
The red sole was created when Christian Louboutin received a shoe prototype inspired by Andy Warhol's flowers. Louboutin thought the shoe looked boring. Luckily, his assistant was painting her nails red when the shoe arrived. The designer got the idea to use the red nail polish to paint the sole, and voila, the red bottoms were born. What I actually love about this is that Louboutin changed a neglected part of shoes into something attractive and sellable.
To me, red is all about power and confidence, which all women can relate with. That's another reason that makes Louboutin shoes so renowned.
That's right.
Speaking of color, was the color pink considered a color for boys only?
Yep. For centuries, pink was associated with masculinity because it was a lighter shade of red, which represents strength. Blue, on the other hand, was seen as a softer color, perfect for girls. It wasn't until World War II that this color association started to shift, partly due to marketing strategies of clothing companies.
Let's address another aspect of fashion, which is beauty standards. They are humans' ideals of what's considered attractive. Let's rewind the clock a little bit and step back into ancient times. Could you enlighten us about the ideas of beauty in Asia in the past?
Certainly. In ancient Asia, beauty standards varied across different cultures and time periods. In China, round faces, tiny feet, long shiny hair all became associated with the feminine ideal. Some cultures practiced painful customs, like foot binding, to make girls look beautiful for marriage. This involved slowly bending their feet until the toes folded inwards.
How painful it is. Do Chinese women still have to practice foot binding now?
Thankfully, this practice has been abandoned in modern Chinese society today. It was a cruel tradition that inflicted immense pain on women for unnecessary reasons.
Yeah, I think such unrealistic practice should be abandoned. Now let's shift our focus to Europe. How are today's standards different from those in the past?
During the Renaissance, fair skin, plump figures, and a high forehead were considered attractive. In the Victorian era, pale skin, a small waist, and a delicate appearance were a main thing.
How is its today's standards different from those in the past?
Things have been much more different, I must say. Pale skin is no longer the sole standard. Healthy tans are embraced, and a wider range of body shapes are celebrated. Overall, changes have been made towards embracing diversity and individuality.
That's amazing to hear how the standards have transformed.
How about America?
Does its standards share any similarities with Europe's standards?
Not actually. In the early 20th century, a slender figure with a flat chest was considered fashionable. Later, with the rise of Hollywood, curvier figures like those of Marilyn Monroe became iconic. The ideal feminine body of this decade was an hourglass shape with bigger breasts, a tiny waist, and wide hips. Fast forward to today, there is a growing emphasis on body positivity and inclusivity.
It's great to see more inclusivity in fashion nowadays. But are there still some common themes across cultures when it comes to beauty?
Even with more diversity, there are still some general ideas that tend to be seen as beautiful across cultures. For example, clear, healthy skin is often considered attractive, as are symmetrical features and a bright smile. These can be seen as signs of good health and vitality.
Nowadays, social media has a big impact on beauty standards. So, Fiona, how does social media affect people's perceptions of beauty?
Social media platforms allow us to see a wider range of people than ever before. that challenge traditional standards and promotes an inclusive vision of what's attractive. On the bright side, social media provides a platform for people to express themselves through fashion. But on the other side, people may compare their appearance to the perfect images they see online. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem.
But it's important to remember that beauty is subjective. What one person finds attractive, another might not. And that's okay.
Beauty is about embracing what makes you unique and feeling confident in your own skin.
That's a beautiful message, Fiona. Now let's get to know some fresh vocabulary related to fashion. Undergarment, meaning a piece of underwear. Example, you should choose undergarments in the right size to ensure comfort. Popularize, meaning to make something become popular. Example, it was Pavarotti in the 1980 who really popularized opera. Delicate, meaning pleasantly soft or light / having a thin, attractive shape. Example, we chose a delicate floral pattern for our bedroom curtains. Masculinity, meaning the characteristics that are traditionally thought to be typical of or suitable for men. Example, he often wears suits and ties, which are traditionally associated with masculinity. Versatile, meaning used for many different purposes. Example, a leather jacket is a timeless and versatile garment that can be worn in all seasons. Fad, meaning a style, activity, or interest that is very popular for a short period of time. Example, there was a fad for wearing ripped jeans a few years ago. Individuality, meaning the qualities that make a person or a thing different from others. Example, his individuality really comes out when he dances. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you, Fiona, for your participation. And for our listeners, thank you for joining with us today. Don't forget to check the free PDF in the description for more useful vocabulary. Goodbye, and we'll see you in the next episodes.